Joe's the Executive Director of the Department of Labor and Employment. He has a few announcements to share with you on our progress implementing the CARES Act and paying new benefits. We have Jeff Fitzgerald. He is the Director of the Unemployment Insurance Division for the Department of Labor and Employment. And then we have Ryan Gedney. He's our Senior Economist. And so we'll be spending about half an hour with Joe and Jeff on some of the announcements we have to share. And then Ryan will get into the March employment situation and answer any of your questions on that. So with that, Joe, I guess take it away.
Thanks, Cher, and good morning to everyone. Thank you for taking the time to join us today. Before we get to the March numbers, we do want to spend some time because we know many of you have constituents and customers that are asking about our unemployment insurance programs in Colorado. And so thanks to all of you for helping us get out this critical updating information to Coloradans who have had their employment situations change suddenly, found themselves in need of support. As you all know, Colorado's unemployment insurance program, like all uninsurance programs across the country, has been under unprecedented strain for the last month, beginning around March 16th. You have been following the claims and benefit paid numbers and the impact COVID-19 has had on our economy, so I wanted to spend a lot of time on the data today. I don't want to spend a lot of time on the data today, but I do want to update you on our plan to begin accepting pandemic unemployment assistance claims and some other key updates on the CARES Act implementation in Colorado. There has been a lot of attention and interest to the CARES Act passed by Congress and signed by the President into law on March 27th. Colorado, like other states, received USDOL guidelines on the weekend of March 4th. In every state, these rules and regulations needed to be built into systems to assure federal compliance before administering benefits. As most of you probably know, the CARES Act provides up to 39 weeks of unemployment benefits to those who were not eligible for regular unemployment benefits, mostly self-employed and those directly impacted by COVID-19. It extends state benefits by 13 weeks and provides another weekly $600 benefit for all claimants. After weeks of extensive work, we have stood up a brand new system to begin accepting pandemic unemployment assistance claims and processing these benefits in this system will go live on Monday, April 20th. Regular unemployment benefits will continue to be processed through the existing systems, so everyone currently receiving unemployment benefits does not need to take any action. New claims that fall under one of the new allowed situations for unemployment under the CARES Act will be taken through this new system. Again, this includes gig workers, independent contractors, self-employed, and those who are out of work because of a number of reasons directly related to COVID-19, including caring for a child whose school is closed or someone who has tested positive for COVID-19. Claimants will need to submit claims, manage their benefits, and request payments through this new online system. Again, I'm going to ask Jeff and Cher to speak to details, but Colorado is now among the first group of states to both be accepting these claims while also ready to pay these benefits to customers. The next update is on the federal pandemic unemployment assistance, the additional weekly $600 in unemployment benefits allowed under the CARES Act for all eligible claims, paid retroactively to March 29th, and this benefit extends through July 25th. Again, we have been preparing to pay this new benefit over the last couple of weeks, while we were also building our new online application, and both will be effective beginning Monday, April 20th. No action is required for this additional $600 weekly benefit for those already receiving benefits under the unemployment system. I am also announcing today that for handling questions related to the CARES Act claims, we are opening up a call center specifically designed for handling questions related to the CARES Act. We have selected conversion calls to stand up a remote call center with 80 additional agents to help us manage the claimants' questions and overflow from existing call center, which is overwhelmed due to the unprecedented number of claims we have received as a result of COVID-19. We know callers are frustrated, and our hope is with the additional call center, we can try to alleviate that pressure on the system and help people get the answers to their specific questions. While we doubled our call center staff and extended hours over the last couple of weeks, it is simply too strained to adequately meet the demand. And last Monday on April 20th, we are next Monday on April 20th, we are holding virtual town halls specifically targeted to people who have been unable to connect with us through our call center. For those who have tried to call this week and received a please try your call later message, today we will be calling all of those folks and inviting them to a virtual town hall on Monday, April 20th. There will be 2 town halls, one at 9:15 Monday morning in English and one at 11:30 a.m. On Monday for Spanish-speaking customers. We know our systems are stressed, and we know callers need to try to get their questions answered as quickly as possible. We have put every available resource toward meeting the incredible increasing need to provide support to those Coloradans who need unemployment insurance assistance during this pandemic. Our teams have been working overtime to adjust systems and processes to meet the demand, which has resulted in processing more than 231,000 claims in a 4-week period, paying out more than $109 million in benefits in that time. We will continue to focus on how we can improve these systems going forward because we know the demand will be there. We know we will continue to see claims grow now with the additional availability of benefits to workers who have never been covered before. We don't know what that demand will look like, but we want to assure you that we are doing everything possible to make sure that everyone who is entitled to unemployment insurance benefits during these times has access to apply for those benefits and receive those benefits. So again, I think we have tried to put every tool and resource that we can into the system that are taking claims from these impacted workers. And we are confident that we will continue to make sure that Coloradans who deserve financial stability during these times have access to the unemployment insurance program. With that, I hope we can take some questions based on the information we shared with you today in regards to Colorado being able to implement several provisions of the CARES Act. And I'm going to turn it over to Sharon and Jeff.
Thanks, Joe. I think you covered everything, so we are happy to start taking some questions. And you can chat in, and then we will unmute you, and we'll just go through the list, and I'll acknowledge who we've got teed up to ask a question.
Any questions?
Hi, this is Susan Lontine, Representative Lontine. I did raise my hand in the chat. You might want to look at that function if others have done that as well. And I don't mean to jump in the line if there are others who did that with me. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, we can.
Thank you. Go ahead.
So I just got the notice that this call was happening, and so I was late to the call. I don't want you to repeat everything, but I wondered if you could send out that information so that we could get it out to our constituents really quickly in some sort of easily digestible form. That would be very helpful.
Of course. So I'm sorry I didn't mention this at the top of the call. We have a press release that will go out to this entire group. We have a distribution list of over 500. It will be on our website. We've got new messaging on the main page of coloradoui.gov. We will be pushing updates out on social media. So certainly we will make sure that everybody receives the press release and links to the new updated information.
Thank you, Sharon. I think it's important if we can get that out to you, that you share it with everyone in constituents and people, because people have been asking about this, but I also would refer them to coloradoui.gov because it will have the latest information. And that's actually where they can start applying as new participants in the pandemic unemployment insurance program, as well as the federal pandemic unemployment compensation program starting Monday, the 20th.
Dan, Mika, do you have a question?
Hey, can you guys hear me all right?
You can.
Yeah, so I'm curious, over the past 4 weeks, how many applicants have been denied benefits because they don't qualify under either the traditional or the expanded rules for who qualifies to get unemployment benefits?
Sure, would you like me to take that? It's going to be a less than satisfying answer. I don't have that data at my fingertips. I'm sorry, I just don't. I didn't come prepared to look at the total number of people that have been denied. Sorry.
Is that data that we have available, Jeff, without too much of a lift?
I will take a look. Obviously, our time and intensity has been elsewhere, and so I don't think I have that without somewhat of a lift. But I will take a look, and then I would also remind you that even if folks are denied benefits, they do have appeal rights. So there might be folks that fall into that category that are exercising their appeal rights.
All right, appreciate it.
Question about the $600 benefit. Yes, that is considered income and it's taxed. Filing by last name. At this point, we've not implemented a gating system for the application. Again, as a reminder, it is a brand new application. So we've load tested it, but certainly I believe as Executive Director Barella mentioned, we do not know the universe of workers who might be applying for these benefits. So we will just have to monitor the application throughout the day and work on stability and expanding capacity as we're able to. Let's see. Jeff, would you like? Go ahead.
Jeff, would you mind go ahead and talking about the processing time and the amount of time it takes to get benefits paid in traditional unemployment insurance, and then with the new PAU and also the federal pandemic unemployment compensation program?
Yeah, I'd be happy to do that, Joe. So, as was explained, some of these programs are retroactive to specific dates. So, for example, pandemic unemployment assistance, if you were on the call yesterday, we went through this. It's retroactive to February 2nd of this year for those that whose claim is appropriate to backdate to that date. And then the additional $600, as was mentioned, is retroactive to March 27th. So folks that are going in to file for a pandemic unemployment assistance, let's say on Monday, they will move through the filing experience, submitting all of the necessary documents and attesting to their situation as it relates to their ability to collect these benefits. And then it'll be a roughly a 24-hour period roughly to get them certified as eligible for these benefits. Once that certification process goes through, the subsequent day, they will be able to go into the system and request payment for weeks in arrears. So the next day, they would be able to go back, and if February 2nd was a date that was relevant to them, they would apply for the benefits and be able to execute a payment request for all the dates and arrears that apply to them. And then within a few business days, excuse me, that money will be would be within their bank account. They can either do it via a debit card, or they could do it within direct deposit to their bank. So those are their options. The fastest path for first payment would be to do direct deposit within their bank. Looking forward, though, one cannot request payments for benefits for the week that they are currently in. So that's the timeline for retroactive payments, and then from there they'll be getting a filing day when they're eligible to file for the current weeks that they're in, and then moving forward.
We're going to go to Andy Kenny talking about our efforts to stand up the system, and then we'll go to Charles Ashby. Andy, would you like to go ahead and ask your question?
Can you hear me?
We can.
Awesome. So can you just talk a little bit about what it's looked like in the CDLE office over the last couple of weeks trying to stand up that new system? How many people have been working on it? Who have they been? And kind of what's the pace of that work looked like?
Would you like me to take this one, Cher? Sure. So it's been a collaborative effort. We've had to involve UI operations staff. We've had to involve our internal Office of Information Technology state staff, as well as our vendor partner. And so considerable effort on all three fronts. Cumulatively upwards of nearly 100 FTE working collaboratively to get this executed from a technology standpoint, from a testing standpoint, from a training standpoint, in order to stand this system up.
And do you know yet what that will cost for the contractor side of things?
We have an existing relationship with our vendor partner for prior to COVID-19 hitting. Excuse me. We were in the midst of standing up a new system for benefit payments, and so we were able to pivot that effort into specifically driving this towards standing up the pandemic unemployment assistance system. So we were lucky in that regard. And so we have an existing relationship and an existing contract for that.
And lastly, who is that contractor, please?
Deloitte is our vendor partner.
By the way, Deloitte is working with other states standing up similar systems. Real quick, Charles Ashby, I think the answer to your question is no, but go ahead and ask your question about furloughed versus completely unemployed.
Yeah, I was just wondering if there's any way you can break down the UI numbers of people who have filed claims between those people who are just trying to augment their pay because they've lost, what is it, 45%? I can't remember. Those people who are just getting the $600 from the feds, and those people who are getting full employment. Is that possible?
Jeff?
I think you might be best to answer this question in terms of partial employment versus full unemployment. I think you spoke to it yesterday a little bit.
Right. From a claim standpoint, I won't have access to that data. Won't be able to really aggregate that. But when we talk about data that maybe stem from the employment situation, such as the current population survey, we can see different breakouts in terms of those who lost jobs, either on a temporary basis or permanent basis. That data is available on a 12-month kind of rolling average. So there's going to be a lag to it. But I think we'll be able to parse out some of that through the current population survey data. But in terms of claims data, we really won't be able to do that if we're talking about furloughs or reduction in hours and things like that.
The only thing I would add to that is, sorry, Cher, the only thing I would add to that is, we mentioned it yesterday, but to clarify, the $600 is a flat payment, regardless of whether you're partially employed, fully unemployed. If you're receiving any benefit, regular unemployment insurance, pandemic unemployment assistance, it's a flat $600 weekly to every claimant.
So just real quick before we get to Ed Sealever, the PINs in this new application will also be emailed. As we've done changing our processes, as we mentioned yesterday, we've sent out over 160,000 PINs by email since we adjusted our process from a mailing one. Kurt, we're going to get to your question when we get into the LMI data, if that's okay. And Ed Sealever, would you like to go ahead and ask your question?
Sure. I don't know if this is Jeff, Ryan, Joe, whoever. What is the balance at this point of the unemployment insurance trust fund at this pace? When is that going to run out? And at this point, what happens when it does?
Let's see. Ryan, do you want to take that one?
All right. So, pre-COVID-19, our trust fund balance was around 1.1 billion. I think as of a couple of days ago, it was around 950 million. We have paid out, as we mentioned, over the past 4 weeks, about 109 million in regular UI benefits. So that's obviously going to reduce the trust fund balance very quickly. I anticipate at just a baseline 50 million in weekly benefits is very plausible, if not more. We will, of course, also receive contributions from employers in second quarter. That's that is our largest level of trust fund contributions in a calendar year. Second quarter, we might receive around 250, 300 million. But in terms of when the trust fund might become insolvent, we're still trying to model those. It's still very early in terms of kind of looking at these data trends. But again, that's certainly something we'll be looking at very closely right now and in the coming months.
And
And in terms of paying out, oh, sorry, go ahead.
no, I'm sorry. I was going to say, and just a quick follow up: is there a federal program set up to borrow money if it hits insolvency yet, like we went through 10 years ago?
Yes. We would take that same approach in terms of setting up a system where we borrow on a as needed basis from the feds. We did that during the Great Recession. I believe we borrowed around 1.1 billion. Really, they were loans that we paid back. So that's the approach that we would most likely take when the trust fund, or if it goes insolvent.
Can I add a few points here? A few things. One is, want to clarify again that in terms of our state UI trust fund, that only covers the first up to 26 weeks of regular unemployment insurance benefits. So all of the provisions under the CARES Act, meaning pandemic unemployment assistance, as well as the additional $600 that are on top of any type of benefit, as well as the extensions that have been placed upon regular unemployment benefits, moving it from 26 total weeks to up to 39, those additional 13 specifically, all of that is being federally financed and will not impact our state trust fund. And then I would also mention that just to complement what Ryan said, we do have interest-free borrowing from the feds. Should states need it, there's interest-free borrowing from the federal government that's right now through December of this year. That may or may not be extended.
Thank you. And this will be my last follow-up. You mentioned the second quarter receipts coming in from businesses being typically the largest. I mean, does that account for increased money coming in from businesses because of all of the layoffs that have occurred in March?
A second quarter is typically that's our quarter where we receive the most contributions, because that's really the beginning of the rate year in terms of paying on what an individual's taxable wage base is. So it's really just dependent on when we start receiving funds based on what the rate year is. If that makes sense.
Ed, we can have a follow-up call if you like after this press call. So I think we have time for maybe one more question before we turn it over to Ryan to go over the March employment numbers. Jeff, would you like to respond to the last question about just a recap of who now is eligible, when they can begin applying for benefits, just a kind of summary of what we presented today?
Sure. So just to start in review, regular unemployment insurance benefits are available to traditional covered employees who've been impacted via a furlough, a layoff, a reduction in work. And then with the addition of pandemic unemployment assistance, it will cover broadly, depending upon their circumstance, but broadly it will cover gig workers, self-employed, independent contractors. It will also cover some unique categories for covered employees that are specific to COVID-19, that may include needing to care for a child while they are not in school and therefore cannot telework, and cannot telework and therefore cannot work. And some broad categories with regards to COVID-19. Pandemic unemployment assistance will also be available to folks who have exhausted regular unemployment insurance benefits.
Okay, I think we got through the questions. In a few minutes, you'll be receiving a press release from us that summarizes this portion of the call. Our website at coloradoui.gov will be updated shortly, and we will be sharing out information on all of our social media channels. Feel free to send me a note or a text if you have any follow-up questions. And we're going to go ahead and turn it over to Ryan Gedney.
Thanks, Cher. Since we have a lot of people who typically don't call into our employment situation call. I'm going to just give a brief kind of top level overview of some of these data, and then we can kind of get into some questions. The data I will discuss today are based in part on estimates from 2 surveys. Statistics like the unemployment rate, labor force, total employment, and the number of unemployed are derived from a survey of households. Simply put, the household survey is meant to capture the employment and labor force status of individuals within Colorado during a given time. The household survey also includes the self-employed, gig workers, independent contractors, and farm workers. However, we are unable to break out those individuals at the state level. Non-farm payroll job estimates come from a survey of business establishments and government agencies and are intended to measure the number of jobs, not the number of people employed. These estimates include employees in these estimates exclude employees in agriculture, private households, and the self-employed. Other useful data that result from the establishment survey are private sector hours and earnings. As we noted in today's press release, the reference period for the establishment and household surveys was the pay period or week that includes the 12th of the month. Therefore, these data provide a snapshot of Colorado's employment situation during the first stages of the COVID-19 outbreak within the state. Revisions to March data, along with preliminary estimates for April, will be released May 22nd. I anticipate that release should fully incorporate the historically high level of unemployment claims activity and job loss Colorado has experienced since mid-March. So moving to the household survey, first, it is important to note that the unemployment derived from the household survey includes more than just those receiving unemployment insurance benefits. Over time, the share of unemployed Coloradans who receive unemployment benefits, this is also known as the UI recipiency rate, has typically ranged between 15 and 25% during good economic times. At the peak of the Great Recession, more than 35% of jobless persons in Colorado received some type of regular UI payment. That recipiency rate jumped up to more than 60% if federally paid unemployment benefits were also included. I anticipate the recipiency rate will rise substantially in the coming months. So what type of unemployed individuals are also included when we calculate the unemployment rate? There are job leavers, those who voluntarily leave their job to find other work, re-entrants to the labor force. This can typically be someone who retired or exited the labor force and has decided to seek employment again. New entrants. These are generally students who are entering the labor force for the first time. And finally, job losers, which is comprised of unemployed persons who have been laid off through no fault of their own. Job losers are the group of unemployed individuals typically eligible to receive unemployment benefits. With that said, March's seasonally adjusted unemployment rate was 4.5%. This represents a steep increase from the historically low unemployment rate of 2.5% the state enjoyed October 2019 to February 2020. The U.S. unemployment rate moved up from 3.5% in February to 4.4% in March. It has been nearly 15 years, June 2005, since Colorado's monthly unemployment rate exceeded the U.S. rate. In March, Colorado ranked 31st in the nation in terms of unemployment rates. As a reminder, the state had the third lowest unemployment rate in February. Moving to now the establishment survey, the preliminary estimates show that on a seasonally adjusted basis, Colorado non-farm payroll jobs declined by 3,900 from February to March. However, because government added 2,100 payroll jobs over the month, private sector losses in the state totaled 6,000. That is the largest monthly decline in private payroll jobs since July 2009. That month declined 8,000. At the industry level, significant over-the-month declines occurred in education and health services, leisure and hospitality, manufacturing, trade, transportation, utilities, and other services. And by significant, I mean that those industries shed 1,000 or more jobs over the month. February's payroll jobs figures were revised downward to show a decrease of 400 over January versus the previously reported increase of 3,100. Additional responses to the establishment survey are key in determining how much payroll jobs are revised from one month to the next. This represents the first time since early 2010 the state has experienced consecutive months of non-farm payroll job loss. Since March 2019, Colorado has added 43,900 payroll jobs, which translates to a growth rate of 1.6%. That is Colorado's slowest rate of job growth on an over-the-year basis since July 2011. And that's when the state was starting to recover from the Great Recession. And finally, professional and business services and government have accounted for 71% of Colorado's non-farm payroll job growth since March 2019. Mining jobs have declined by 2,400 over the past 12 months, while manufacturing has shed 700 jobs during that same period. And I've not caught up on questions. Doesn't seem like we have a lot. We did have one earlier that was asking about the difference in the count in county level claims versus unemployment. I think I touched a bit on that earlier, in that the county level unemployment numbers are going to comprise of a larger universe than just those receiving UI benefits. So those are not comparable on a one-to-one basis. The household survey does include self-employed, independent contractors, and gig workers. Again, this is a household survey. The current population survey is conducted in conjunction with the Bureau of Labor Statistics and the U.S. Census Bureau. On a national level, about 60,000 households are sampled each month.
Ryan, do you want to take Aldo's question?
Right. So again, these are two different series. Typically, the sample size for the establishment survey is about 7,000 establishments. The household survey for Colorado is around 800 or so. So we do feel that in terms of a more reliable series is the payroll numbers. So these series won't line up all the time. Again, the question is, we had payroll losses of 3,900 and a jump of self-reported unemployment in 6,200. So we're going to have some disconnect in those series. I think it does tell a similar story in that we saw job loss in the establishment survey, or the current employment statistics estimates. And then we also saw a big drop in the employed number from the household survey.
I'll address the call center question in a minute. Ryan, do you want to speak to the question from Charles?
Yeah, I'm just trying to read it right now. So just a second. So the question is, so given the more than 150,000 people who filed for UI benefits, the number of people reporting themselves as unemployed in March was 107,900. Can we read that the actual unemployment rate is really more like 9%? Again, you know, the household survey is based on a reference period of the 12th. So that was prior to really when we started seeing very steep increases. Comparing claims to what the potential unemployment rate might be, it can get a little tricky. This isn't a prediction, but I wouldn't be surprised if we saw, say, double-digit unemployment rate for April, given the claims load that we'll see up to and during the reference period of the 12th for April. But in terms of saying what is the actual unemployment rate right now, the actual unemployment rate for March is 4.5%. when we release April data in May, and that will be the actual unemployment rate then. But I think trying to apply claims numbers to what's the actual unemployment rate, it can get very tricky, and I would advise against it.
Sorry, we do not have a new URL yet for the new application, but it's accessible from coloradoui.gov. So we will revise the landing page so that it's very clear based on worker type, who should apply for which kind of benefit. Ryan, do you want to take Aldo's question? Or Aldo, if you're unmuted, do you want to ask your question?
Sure. Ryan, can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Yeah, so I guess the household survey, it asks if you're actively looking for work. And I guess in theory, if someone's on furlough, they're not going to be actively looking. Could we see an undercount of unemployment next month?
So I think currently the national office, the local area unemployment statistics program is looking into ways to handle that in terms of the high load of furloughs that we'll be seeing. I believe they will be counted as unemployed and not necessarily not in the labor force. But I think we're still looking for guidance on how some of that may be interpreted. And it also depends on how respondents interpret the questions in the current population survey. So there are a couple issues with how that data might flow.
Okay, thanks.
Sure.
Let's see. I think we are almost to the end. So the call center, good question. We put it out to bid. We had, I think, 8 bids. Jeff, correct me if I'm wrong. And we did have a Colorado bid. Unfortunately, they were considerably more than any of the other vendors that submitted bids. And so factors like cost and scaling led us to select another vendor, unfortunately.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Okay, with that, Wayne, I got your note. I will circle back with our folks and make sure that we get all the appropriate charts out to everybody. I'm available, Jeff and Director Barella, after the call when you receive the press release, which if you haven't, it's on its way. If you have any other follow-ups or other questions, feel free to shoot me a note and let us know. But with that, I think we'll go ahead and conclude today's call. Thank you so much for participating. Have a great day and a great weekend.